Contenders, ready! Gladiators, ready! 3, 2, 1. The Gladiators!
Hello and welcome to the GladPod in association with Gladiators TV. I'm David Blackmore, and with me, as always, everyone's favourite gladiator, Jet, and of course, producer Paul. Diving into the mailbag this week, and there's an email from Luke Chesters which caught my eye. Now, he starts his email by sharing that he'd started listening to the podcast on a bus journey, but didn't put his headphones in, so he got and a few funny looks with John Anderson's voice blaring out of his phone, because it is quite a loud start to all of our episodes. Now, as a caveat to that, I usually edit the episodes on, the train. I'm always on a train to and from everywhere. And there's been a fair few occasions where I thought my headphones were connected. And it's that shock as I go to press play and it's like a packed train and you hear, Gladiators already. So, Luke, I absolutely share your pain, because I've had a fair few people who have been like, wonder what he's listening to. Because, people are listening, and I'm guessing people recognise John Anderson's voice. It's quite an iconic voice, especially people of a certain age. There's probably youngsters on their train thinking, what is that old man listening to? But because, that trains are so noisy as well, so I always have my headphones, the volume, I have it toned way up as well, because you can't, I want to make sure that I'm hearing everything that's being said, because it's normally me on the train on a table that's being shared with like 3 other people. Yeah, it does always spark some interesting conversations. But anyway, Luke says his party trick when he's around a bunch of other 30-somethings is to recreate all the Gladiators moves that were used for the Gladiator statistics for Series 2. He remembers Jets being a spin around and then a hair flick. And I know that we've touched on this before, Di, but he asks, who did all the choreography for these Gladiator statistics for Series 2?
Yes, Luke, you're absolutely correct. Mine was a spin around and a hair flick, only because we were on a green screen, which is when they kind of superimpose a background and you're stood in some kind of really random blank space with a green cloth behind you. Originally, I did my own. I think a few of them did their own. But actually, a lot of the choreography came down to the famous duo of Nigel Lithgow himself and Kenny Warwick for all the signatures. And I tell you why, both of them were dancers before ever becoming directors or producers. And I had a real affinity with both of them because of that, with my dance background. And it was a lot of fun. I think people, developing their signatures like Panther with her oar lip on the back of her hand. Oh, and the boys, of course, being incredibly kind of sort of like Atlas man with lots of guns out and big sinister looks. So yeah, I think it was amazing. But yeah, the boys, Kenny and Nigel, they really did step up with their choreographic background, and it was funny.
I was going to say, Paul, is that your party trick as well?
No, I don't think I could pull that off, to be honest. Yeah, I'd have to be seriously drunk to even think about things like that.
If there was a pub quiz round where they blurred the gladiator's face a little bit, do you think you could pretty much get all of those?
100%. Yeah, no problem.
Now, Luke goes on, and I don't know if you think this would be fairly common in the Glad world, Paul, but he says that Falcon was actually his favourite. Why? Because Jet, although he says she was absolutely amazing, you were everyone else's favourite. So he remembers choosing her because he wanted to be, independent, alternative. Do you think that's quite common, Paul? Do you think that Glad fans love Jet, loved Wolf, loved Hunter, but also wanted to hold a flame for another Glad?
Yeah, I think the one thing that was really good about the original series is, I think we've touched on it before, there was a gladiator for everyone, and I think that's where Nigel and the team were really good at selecting different characters to appeal to a different kind of fan base. With Falcon, what can I say? She was absolutely lovely, probably the nicest gladiator out of everybody. Sorry, Di, but she was absolutely lovely. She's beautiful, always smiling, always positive, and I think she showed that you didn't necessarily have to be really mean and moody to be a really good gladiator. She was also a superb performer in the arena, true all-rounder, and she was actually the second longest serving female gladiator as well, just behind Lightning by 1 series. So she was probably underrated, but totally appreciated by the fans. Her hairstyle was obviously iconic and memorable and stayed with her throughout the whole entire series. She just totally personified her name. And Di, didn't you help her get on the show back in the day as well?
Correct. Absolutely. I think I'd been given a tip off by Andy Norgate. I also shed some background in teaching in aerobic fitness as well. And she lived on the Surrey-Hampshire border, not far from where I moved out of London too. And he basically said, Bernie, that was her real name, but can you go and visit Di, who is our jet, for a chat? And I kind of I'd been tasked with sort of persuading her and talking her into it, because two things about Bernie: incredibly classy, very gentle and very quiet. There was a point at which I thought, she just looks perfect. She's going to be an amazing performer, but there's a shyness. And I always loved that about her. And it is almost like a gentleness. And she was just stunning, absolutely stunning. I don't think I'd seen, apart from Panther, a female physique that was closest to what the original ideas, like from the Americans, of what we wanted our female gladiator physiques to be like.
Yeah, and I'd like to echo what both of you have said about Falcon, because as many of you listening will know, Bernie sadly died on the 14th of March 2023, aged 59, after a brave battle with cancer. She leaves behind her son Adam and daughter Angel. She would have been 60 this week on the 6th of November. We really had hoped Bernie would have been a future guest on the GladPod, because we know she was an avid listener. So what we're hoping to do now is to record a tribute episode of the GladPod in the near future. So for all of you guys out there, please do get in touch, send in your memories and your stories of Falcon, and we're going to try get in as many as we can. You can do that by all the usual means, by email, sliding into our DMs on social media. But now let's get on with this week's episode, shall we?
3, 2, 1.
For our next edition of the GladPod, we have an American Gladiators legend. You fans will know her as Ice, but we know her better as Lori Fetrick from the American Gladiators. She competed in 5 seasons from 1990 until 1996 before going on to the American Gladiators live dinner show in Orlando. Welcome to the GladPod, Lori.
Well, thank you very much. You know what ICE stands for? Intense, confidence, and excellence. Contenders, let's see if you're hot enough to melt the ice today.
Just before we get into your gladiator history, I wondered if we could cover a little bit about your life before Gladiators. So I understand that you were born in California, you played volleyball, softball, basketball. So how did you get into bodybuilding and eventually get onto Gladiators?
Interesting enough, basically out of high school, I went to try to do college for a little while when I would play college ball and softball. So I was trying to juggle my schedule from playing softball and working at the same time. I got no financial help whatsoever from my parents, no scholarships at that time. So it was real kind of a struggle of balancing it. So believe it or not, college had to go and I had to go to work. And so I started working as an assistant accountant in the back office for a software company at that time. And when I was in the back office, I noticed, because at this point in time, I think I was 19, 20 years old. The people that I was working with in the back had been working there for 5 years. And I hate to say this, but they were all over 200 pounds. And it scared me. It scared me to thinking, oh my God, is this where my life is going? I'm going to be sitting in a chair and I'm not going to have anything to do. So on my lunch hours, I started going to the gym. And at that point in time, I'm going to date it a little bit, but at that point in time, that's when everybody was just doing aerobics. I say women were only doing aerobics. No women were in the weight room really at that time. So I kind of got on the floor of the aerobic room and I'm like, okay, this is really not for me. I don't really like it. I kept eyeing the weights over there, where all the guys were. So I just kind of started playing around with the weights and kind of really got into it. I switched gyms that year and there was a personal trainer that came up to me and said, oh my God, you'd make a great bodybuilder. And I kid you not, that's exactly how it all happened. Basically from there, I just started bodybuilding and started doing the circuit because it was competition. And I love competition. So I kind of got addicted to it. Just started competing in the bodybuilding world. And I wanted to go pro, actually, before I got Gladiators.
You were my absolute hero. Absolute. I was like, what? I was watching you in the middle of the night on, was it Friday evenings over here? But I was like, Gladiators? What's this? And then I got the call. I'm like, what? And then one of the best things was actually working with you. And he was like, I can't believe this.
What's a little bit different is when I used to come out, they used to scream, "Ice, ice, baby." I walk out here, now it's jet, jet, baby.
She's laughing at me, but I can't tell you why. In 1990, I started watching the American Gladiators, but I would never have dreamed a few years later I would become one myself. And this lady was my complete idol. It still is. So today's been a really big day for me.
Well, thank you, Jet. It's really nice of you. It's funny that you say something like that because you don't really realize what an impact you're making, you know, while you're doing the show and while you're training and things like that. You have no idea what kind of impact you're making, you know, across the world and over the screen until probably honestly like 10 years later when you start hearing stories, you know, and you're just like, wow, that was really interesting. That's pretty cool.
When did you get the Glad call? Is it a moment that you can remember? You can look back and go, I can remember exactly where I was, what I was doing when I got the phone call to say, I'm in.
I'm going to take about 2 minutes and go, it wasn't seriously that easy for me. Okay. A lot of I want to say the beginning gladiators like Zap and Nitro and some of those, the very first players, they actually got a call because they were either at Gold's Gym in Venice or they had done some type of television. They said, hey, we want you as a gladiator. And boom, they did that. Mine wasn't that easy. Mine was basically, I saw the show and I was watching it and I knew who Ray Holly was because of the fact of bodybuilding. So boom, that caught my eye right away. I started watching it and I was like, and I tell everybody this and it's no secret. I started watching the show going, oh my God, this is the stupidest show I've ever seen, but I can do it. I can do this show because it was like, you know, sports and athletics and fun stuff. So I went down to Venice and I saw Zap and I was like, you know, how do I get on that show? And she goes, well, you know, it just so happens I'm pregnant and they're going to be replacing me. And she goes, oh, just watch the end of the show. They'll tell you how to, you know, do tryouts. So I sat diligently at the end of the show watching. There was nothing. There was absolutely nothing. It just had the production company and that was it. So again, dating myself, there was no internet. There was nothing to get on to find out how to do this. I actually had to flip through what we had. It's called Yellow Pages. Find out. Yeah, exactly. How to go, it was a big old thick phone book, how to go find out where the company was. I actually drove to the company, handed in my headshot and my resume and said, hey, how can I do tryouts? They said, great, you know, not a problem. We'll hold on to your headshot and resume when we're done with or getting ready for tryouts. So actually about a month later, I got a call, tryouts were there. 75 girls showed up I competed against. And we're talking big bodybuilder girls, 5'9", 5'10", weighing 180 pounds, just brutes. I was like, oh my God. So I competed against them. They went from 75 girls down to 20 girls. And these are all constant tryouts, by the way. 75, 20, and then we went down to 10, then we went down to 5, and then from the 5, they hired 2 of us. That whole process was 3 entire months. So I didn't get the, hey, you want to be a gladiator? I wish it was that easy, but no, mine was a process. So the day I got the call, to be honest with you, I had been on them going, do I have it? Do I have it? Because we here in California have something called the Colorado River that we all go to in the summertime and like party and go boating and jet skiing and everything else. I had a trip planned and I finally called them and I was like, I'm leaving. I'm leaving for an entire week. Either you want me and I stay or I'm out. And they said, give us 3 hours. Let us call you back. Fine. They called me 3 hours later and said, don't go. You're hired.
From Universal Studios Hollywood. This is American Gladiators.
Ice, lace, and gold make up our terrible trio of blondes to take on the contenders in this match. Trish suffering the consequences of being wrapped up by ice.
Very physical game of Powerball. Both Gold and Ice don't shy away from contact.
Running out of steam and taking a beating physically. They've been to the mat several times. Well, it was pretty, but it was also physical. As we watch here, Ice squaring up and taking Trish on a trip down to the mat.
Just like the men's American Gladiators, the women's Gladiators have 2 new teammates. One of them, Ice. Ice, you picked up the game very, very fast.
It's a lot of fun. Your adrenaline starts pumping, and you know, I'm the new gladiator, and I have to prove myself out here. Nobody can get past me.
Gold, last season you were a rookie. Now you're a sophomore, so to speak, sophomore gladiator. And you too haven't lost your touch either.
All I have to say is, Aisha, a great addition to the team.
And Lori, is it true as well that the potential new gladiators were guinea pigs for new events that were coming into the series, like Hang Tough?
Oh, absolutely. So like I said, when we were going down from 75 to 20, by the time we hit 10 gladiators, I want to say 10 contestants for the, to get the track, they were using us as guinea pigs for all the new games coming up. So I remember they were testing out Hang Tough, and they'd had no idea how thick they should have the ring. So they kept changing the rings out. They kept changing the length of the chains out. And I remember leaving that tryout and my hands had blisters all over them because they didn't give us any of the nice little, hang things on the rings that were really awesome at the end. No, my hands were blisters going through. I kept going, oh my God, one more. Oh my God, one more. Because every tryout was like, I've got to be the best at this. I can't fall. I've got to do this. So yeah, it was pretty thrilling. It was nerve-wracking.
How did the name ICE come about? What did you think of it?
Well, once I did get Gladiators, I knew that either they were going to pick a name or I had to come up with a pretty cool name. And I started Zap and Nitro and, Gemini and Lace. And I was like, okay, I have to really think of this or they're going to give me some stupid names. That was the year Top Gun came out. The first year that Top Gun came out, the movie. And Iceman, Val Kilmer, somebody goes, oh my God, you look just like his sister. And I was like, huh. And somebody went, Iceman. And I sat back and I went, Ice. And they were like, score, that's it. And I was like, sweet.
And then there was the Vanilla Ice song as well.
Couldn't have been better timing.
Good timing. And that went on to be your theme tune for Gladiators as well, didn't it?
Yeah, that was every time I came out, like when we were doing the live tour and everything, that was my theme song. So that was pretty cool.
Standing at the other end for the Gladiators, there is Ice.
Stone Dance Live.
Well, Ice is from the American Gladiators. Mike, tell us a bit about her.
John, she's 5'7", she's 10 stone, 8 pounds, a little bit lighter than she normally is for our shows. She trained extremely hard for this international competition. Hang Tough, one of her best events.
So you joined American Gladiators in season 2, along with Diamond, Turbo, Thunder, like you said, briefly replacing Zap, who went off to have a baby. What is your first memories of stepping out into the Gladiator arena with your costume and all of the fans in the audience? Could you take us back to that moment?
It was really interesting because when I walked out, I was pretty nervous. I mean, come on, who wouldn't be? However, once the UK arena, how many people sit in that arena?
It was around 7,000 to 8,000.
So now when we were filming on a soundstage. So our soundstage only held like 200 people. When we walked out, it wasn't the roar of 7,000 to 8,000 people. It was the roar of 200.
And in the first season of American Gladiators, they actually had cardboard cutouts, didn't they, for the audience?
They had cardboard cutouts. It was hysterical because nobody knew the show. But what was cool about it is we filmed at Universal Studios. And so, they had the tram ride. And so the tram ride, what would happen at certain sound stages, they'd let people off to go in and see the show for 30 minutes, get back on the tram, go to another show. So that's what they were doing. But in the first season, they didn't stop at the Gladiator arena. So they had to have they were begging friends and families to bring your friends and family for the audience, just to fill the seats. The second season, basically, it did pick up because we got the tram and all the people in the audience coming out. So that was pretty cool.
And what I found interesting about the American Gladiators was how the show was recorded quite differently to what it was in the UK. So over here, we predominantly had 2 shows a day, but they were filmed as complete shows. So we had the same audience from event 1 all the way through to the Eliminator. Whereas I believe with the American version, you used to film 2 shows at once. So you'd see a batch of Hang Toughs, a batch of Joust, a batch of Atmospheres one after another. How did you find the difference, obviously recording it as a full show versus how the domestic American series did it?
Well, we didn't know any different, because of the fact that that's how we were used to filming. So we would have, like you said, you'd have a batch of Joust, a batch of Hang Tough, because our sound stage was small. And so they had to break down the entire game in order to set up the other one. So they found it more effective to actually to film 2 shows at one time and have that batch. So basically we had we had the 2 contenders on one show for the females, 2 contenders on another show. So we would have 4 contenders a day, and we would just rotate back and forth from, the first show to the second show. So we didn't know any different. So we were fine with, but I think that if we had an arena like over the UK to where you did the entire show and then you broke that thing down, rebuilt it again, I mean, that would be kind of cool. I mean, I actually enjoyed that when we came over there. It was a whole different way of filming it.
And I think it translated through to the audience on the screen as well, because I think because the audience was following the contender's journey in that entire show, when it came to like the eliminator or really exciting events, the audience was actually cheering for somebody that they'd followed their entire journey. Whereas I guess like with the way that the American show, and I believe the UK show filmed it in that way for our very first series, it must be quite hard for the audience to really invest in the contenders and what they were kind of trying to achieve.
Well, again, remember, we only had 200 people in the audience. So it wasn't like, okay, so this is going to be something completely different than the first show and the second show. And by the way, the events were like this. It was back to back to back. So, if somebody's coming to see Susie, well, Susie's competing and then they just go 3 more. And by the time Susie's back up again on the joust, I mean, yeah, there was a small waiting period, but they were so into the show with the other contestants, they found themselves rooting for the other contestants at the same time. So that was kind of cool because they started, mixing and intermingling the families and they got to know each other. It's like, oh, that's my daughter. Oh, that's my daughter. So they started becoming friends. That's kind of cool.
And so like, obviously, joining in the second series, the show was ramping up, merchandising started kicking off, you actually had 2 action figures, the show was picking up a really great fan base. When did you start getting recognized in the street and fans coming up to you?
I would probably say, okay, so our merchandising, that really didn't really kick in, I don't believe, until 3rd or 4th season over here. And I would say probably around that time, I mean, it was probably around the 3rd or 4th, about the 3rd season, it started kind of like, really going and people started recognizing you in the restaurant. That was about it.
And I guess that coincided obviously with the American Gladiators live tour, which to all of the UK fans who are listening, this was like an epic countrywide. I think it was like 100 plus cities and you played Madison Square Gardens and it was totally sold out. So I guess that would have coincided with the kind of the whole merchandise and the show really establishing itself.
Yes, definitely. That's when we actually sold out Madison Square Gardens. That's when we knew how big we were. That's when we were just like, whoa, this is amazing.
Walking into Madison Square Gardens and all the lights hit you and the auditorium was full and you just hear the roar of the people. And that's when you go, holy shit, we're kind of famous.
How different was that then, taking it on tour? Because presumably all the different venues and arenas would have been different sizes and everything like that. So how did it sort of translate?
We have the Forum, we have Madison Square Garden, Nassau Coliseum, and these are all in different, huge cities, Long Island, New York, California. The other arenas, they were still kind of like football arenas, so they were still pretty good size arenas. The interesting thing was the setup, and how they set up the games. They weren't quite sure, I don't think, how they were going to do some of these things. So the semi trucks, I think we had 5, 6, 7 semi trucks ahead of us, and they'd go in 12 hours ahead of us and set up the entire arena. Our tour bus would follow behind, and by the time they set up, we'd go on at say 6, 7 o'clock that night. And then we were done by 9, something like that, get out, sign autographs, jump back on the tour bus and drive to the next city. So we did this over and over and over. It was extremely tiring, extremely exhausting. You were in a different hotel room every single night. We didn't stay longer than one night in a city. So, and then imagine, okay, Diane, imagine this. Imagine having all your gladiators on one tour bus.
No. No. No.
Oh yeah.
There must be some stories about what went on that tour bus.
You have no idea. Some of the stories we can't even repeat. Let's put it that way. We were sworn to secrecy on some of the things that went down on that bus, And since we're all pretty tight and close anyway, we kind of, I respect their decisions. But it was like some of the things that went down were just like, oh my God, there's no way.
What goes on tour stays on tour.
We didn't even talk about it in the Netflix, and they started talking to us about, different things, on the tour. And I know that some of them made a phone call to me and said, this will not be discussed, correct?
But this is the Netflix documentary, the 6-part documentary series that you're co-producing with Nitro for Netflix.
I remember the producer says, hey, I'm gonna make you guys stars. You guys are gonna make a lot of money.
American Gladiators, that TV show where people supposedly get to test their strength against a bunch of Hulks?
Nothing was staged, ever. Every competition was do or die.
It was barbaric.
Look, we had groupies, we had sex, we had drugs, and we were coming to a town to kick the out of you.
And that's when you go, holy, we're kind of famous.
These guys' egos just start getting bigger and bigger.
You're never gonna defeat 220 pounds of twisted steel and sex appeal.
Something that was delightful started to feel resentful.
I just remember him chasing after the referee. It was really scary.
And the next thing I feel, my best friend biting me in the face. These events were dangerous.
They didn't understand the injuries that were gonna happen.
The worst event ever, the human cannonball.
They fly down on a rope and knock you off your ass. That was it. That was the end of him.
We knew that there were issues. You'd have to be blind, deaf, and dumb to not know that there were issues.
There was no mercy when it came to the American Gladiator television show.
If you think you're not replaceable, you are, and that's one of the things that they wanted to prove to people.
Watching the show completely go into a downward spiral was pretty terrible.
There wasn't a chance in hell this was going to continue to air.
Unfortunately, our team got split. So, and I was kind of bummed about that. But at the same time, the gladiators that went with Netflix, I don't know, how do I say this nicely? A-list gladiators, B-list gladiators. A-list gladiators, originals. Look at Diane, you're so fun. You're like, why did you guys say that? Very true. Diane, come on. You're an A-list gladiator. There's B's and C's below you. There are. Okay. A-list gladiators went to Netflix, and the B-list gladiators, they went on to ESPN. And it's really sad that it actually got split up like that, and I wasn't happy about it. But at the same time, logistics, everything that was happening, it just happened that way. I mean, the whole story a lot of the story is told on Netflix on how it happened. But at the same time, it was, everybody works with Johnny Ferraro, and unfortunately, that's kind of how I got all split up.
Oh, goodness me. It sounds very political.
It was very political. Let's put it that way. It's kind of sad, but at the same time, like I said, okay, so who do we got? We got Zap, Sky, Blaze, Diamond, Nitro, Tower, Laser, Gemini.
That is a good roster of gladiators. And I just think as well, from a fan's point of view, yes, it's disappointing that there's obviously 2 documentaries going on, but then it's 2 times the footage for fans to watch as well.
There you go. Exactly. If you think about it, you put all those gladiators together on one documentary, you're not going to get the time that you would want on the documentary if every single gladiator were on the documentary. So it works out good because they get their time, they get their documentary and we get our documentary. And I was kind of heading up a lot of the gladiators in the very beginning when the first thing came out. And I was just like, you guys, I want you to think about something real seriously right now. If you're sitting on and this was before Netflix. This is before we even knew about Netflix. This was when we first got, kind of like, hey, do you want to do a documentary? I called everybody. I said, here's the deal. I said, if you're sitting on the couch and all of a sudden you see your face on a documentary on Netflix and it's worldwide and you didn't get paid one dime, how would you feel about that? And I was like, exactly. So don't sign your life away. You need to wait. And so finally convinced everybody to wait. And yes, we finally got paid for it. But it was only because we held our ground. And that was it. If everybody would have just went, okay, let's do it. They had done it for free, just like They pretty much did the show for free, what we got paid.
And talking of controversy, just to rewind slightly back to the series. Well, after series 3 and the live tour, I believe like there was obviously you, Lace, Blaze, Gold, Gemini, Nitro, and Thunder all walked out of the series, left the series. I think it was due to not being paid enough and obviously the merchandising money. Could you take us back to that time and give us a bit of information about what exactly went down after series 3?
Basically what happened is when we got back from tour and we sold out all the arenas, we realized how popular we were. And so all we did is we came back and said, we hired ourselves a lawyer and said, hey, all we want is a small piece of merchandising. That's all. We're not asking for the world. We're not asking for anything that, rightfully we shouldn't get just a small piece of. I mean, we got nothing. We got no merchandising. The only thing we did is we got paid for the show and the residuals, which was, about that much. So when we came back, that's all we did. We just went, hey, we're just asking for a little piece of the pie. And they just went, no, we'll replace you. And so we said, go ahead, replace us then. They did. And that's when the ratings were here. And then after that, you could follow the ratings. The ratings dropped. The ratings dropped significantly, but again, I don't know what it's like in the UK, but over here, somebody told me a long time ago, and this was when we were kind of, negotiating on the documentary for MoneyWise, they were saying people don't get paid. They kept trying to tell us, they were going, people don't get paid for documentary. We were like, oh, that's really interesting. So our lawyer said, and I'll never forget this, he goes, if somebody tells you the sky is purple enough, you're going to start believing it. And pretty soon you're going to look up and you're going to see the sky and it's going to be purple because they told you this for so long, they're going to start believing it. So they tried to convince us the show is the star, not the gladiators. And they told us this year after year after year. So they were trying to convince us that we weren't the stars of the show. It was the show, period. So they're going to replace you and just bring in new gladiators and the show will go on and the ratings will still be high. But here in the US, it wasn't that way. Now, here in the US, people follow their favorites. And when they're not there, they stop watching the show.
The Samuel Goldwyn Company presents the American Gladiators.
Glad so very much you could join us for another season of the American Gladiators. We have added a new event this year, something we call Skytrack. We have added some new wrinkles to some old favorite events. Plus, we have some new members of our American Gladiator team. A lot of surprises this season, but Larry, the thing I'm most excited about is the level of competition because all of the contenders, or the majority of contenders on this show, are veterans of our recently completed live tour.
Bottom line, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned because the fur is going to fly this year.
And then by season 5, that's why you were recalled back into the team and you remained there until the final episode of series 7. What persuaded you to return, and did anything change with any of that?
I never wanted to leave, to be honest with you. I never wanted to leave. It was the best. It was literally a dream come true job. I loved being on the show. It was just like a passion of mine that it was just amazing. So I never wanted to leave. That wasn't the deal. And we were actually, to be honest, we were very shocked that they let us go, but they're playing their card. So no, I was honestly, if I think at the time and I go back, I would have never left, because even when we went back, we still didn't get merchandising rights. Nothing changed, and that's why it's kind of like, if we would have really known that they were going to replace us, I mean, like seriously, then I think that none of us would have left, so we played their bluff and they won. And so whatever, we just went back the following year.
And talking about your time on the show, I've got some stats that have been compiled by our stat king, Daryl Ryan, who's a massive Gladiators fan. Covering over your stats, you competed in 125 shows, stretching over 5 series. This probably isn't including the live tour, including 2 international series. You had 152 wins, which results in a 71% win rate. Your best events were Pyramid, and tug of war, which was known as tilt in the UK, and you only lost once on each of those games.
Round 4 for the women, and you're looking at a tug of war. Our contender, LaTanya Watson, going against our gladiator. It will be Ice. LaTanya has 30 seconds to try to pull the rope out of Ice's hands, pull her off the platform, or maneuver that red ribbon you see in the center of the rope to her side. If she can do that after 30 seconds, she'll get 5 points. If she can pull Ice off, she will get 10. Again, these platforms rock back and forth. Initially, it's in the contender's favor to offset the gladiators' height and weight advantage, and LaTanya has got Ice going. LaTanya working hard, maybe too hard. Ice able to pull her off as LaTanya got caught, I believe, off balance. No points there.
And apparently you refused to do Skytrack, which was the race on the ceiling, because you were so worried about it being upside down and if there was an earthquake at the time. Is that true?
Absolutely. I would not. When I saw them building the track on the ceiling, I was like, nope. The other thing is it just didn't look that much fun.
I mean, the American version was very different to the UK version in its concept. So the American version was like a Velcro track, and you had these kind of like Velcro gloves, which you kind of...
on your hands and on your feet.
Yeah, kind of pulled yourself along, and it was a direct race with the 2 contenders and 1 gladiator. Whereas in the UK, it was just a race with the gladiators chasing to try and hit the contender's target, and then firework display would kind of go off. Did you ever get to do the UK Skytrack when you came over for the international series?
No.
I was wondering if that would have made it any different with having less earthquakes in the UK.
And it's funny because I thought the same thing when we had the atmosphere, in the cages. And when you got in the atmosphere and they had the gun, they're like, zip, like literally locking you in. I kind of remember looking at the grip guy and I go, if there's an earthquake, how do I get out of here? And he was like, you're probably safer in there than anything else. He goes, this building could fall down on you because those things were like built with steel, It's like, okay, I'll take your word for it. Yeah, I mean, it's a true concern. It really is. We have earthquakes here.
We're talking about games that you might have been less keen on. I want to bring back a game that I definitely know, being a Gladiator fan myself. It's probably the most hated American Gladiators event of all time. And it's an event that we never had in the UK, Human Cannonball.
I mean, come on. Just the name alone. I mean, I want to know, I think it would have been hysterical to sit in a room of them kind of discussing these games and coming up with games. And I just want to know the person who thought of this game. I know, let's put somebody on a pedestal and have them swing down and hit the other person off. I mean, it's just like, it was insane.
Time to get physical now for Margaret McCargo as she draws gold on her first swing. Susan will be going against Ice.
Ready? Oh, Susan knocking Ice right off the pedestal, much to everyone's surprise. Here we have a shot from Susan's helmet cam as she approaches Ice. Ice looking prepared, but suddenly spinning around and flying from the pedestal. What an impact.
When the person jumped on that rope and swung down to you, they were 10 times their body weight. So, and then they gave you this little tiny pad. What was the pad for?
So just to give the UK fans some context, the name of the game was Human Cannonball. The contender was on a slightly higher platform, had to jump off and on this rope, and had to try to hit the gladiator off their little pedestal. Then the gladiator's job was to deflect them and try and stay on the platform, which, like Lori said, it was an interesting watch. And also, is it true that you have received like nerve damage in your left arm from the amount of times that you were impacted by the contenders?
That's probably why. I mean, I personally hated it so much. Like I said, when they came down there 10 times their body weight, I'd always come in with my left shoulder. I don't know why. Left shoulder, I held the pad right there. So they would hit that left shoulder, and at the impact, And time over time over time, this left arm, for some reason, I mean, it was aching, like all the way from my shoulder down to my fingertips. I couldn't figure out where the pain was coming from. And so finally I went to a doctor and he sent me to a nerve specialist. They hooked everything up and they said, your ulnar nerve, your main nerve going down your arm is completely damaged. And that was from that wonderful game.
Diane, from the description, would you have liked to have played that game? I'm guessing it would be a no.
Not at all. Not at all.
Come on, Diane. You would have been so good at it. Wait. I get to ask a question. Diane, what was your least favorite event?
Probably Duel, actually. I know the pugilisticness of it all was like classic Gladiators. I liked Hang Tough. I liked the Wall, but I didn't like Duel.
You did not like anybody hitting you in the head with a pugil stick.
Exactly.
And when they did it, when they connected, it kind of rung your bell, didn't it? It was not fun when they connected.
Not fun. I was sure my hearing went.
No, I would say honestly that would probably be my second least favorite game. I didn't care for it that well either. I didn't like being. I mean, my whole thing on the joust was, if I didn't get the first hit in, stun them a little bit, right? There was definitely, we would play the games like, okay, what do I need to do first?
And Margaret McCargo is up first in the joust. She'll be dueling Ice.
Obviously, Margaret's giving up a good deal of size and strength in this. It'll be interesting to see whether Ice strikes first or plays a little defensive strategy.
That's Ice's trademark, but it is Margaret who gets off the first shot. Now Ice is countering. Big shot there to the head of Margaret, and down she goes.
Well, she didn't have much trouble throwing Margaret off there. She took her off much like she was a feather.
Power wins out over quickness. Ice, short and sweet. 6 seconds. You didn't even break a sweat.
I love this. This is great.
What turns you on about the pugil stick and the joust?
I just want to get him down because I don't want to be the one going down.
That makes good sense. Nice philosophy to have. You're going to be tough to deal with. The Ice Woman.
And what was your favorite?
Powerball.
Ice, Gold, and Blaze. Powerball, a rude way to start the competition. It's like getting a wake-up call at about 4 a.m. in the morning. 45 seconds. Object here. Ready? Score as many times as you can. Outside cylinders worth 2 points. Inside cylinders worth 3.
Nice move. Ice says no way.
10 seconds to go. Neither contender has scored. Oh! And boy, time has expired.
The shutout.
Gladiators, I don't know if you're aware of this, but according to our crack stat man, that is the first shutout ever for the female Gladiators. Ice, how do you feel?
Oh, hot. I love this game. It's the best game on the floor.
Congratulations, a shutout for the Gladiators.
And who was your A team?
We didn't get to pick a team. We were just thrown out individually. I mean, every show was different players. So I think that's why I like Powerball so well, is because of the fact that, to me, we all kind of approach the game as an individual. I had my end, of the Powerball, whatever that was, and I was deflecting. My whole thing was deflecting these 2 cylinders right there. So I could tackle, I could push, I could be brutal, I could have, that was fun. However, I did notice one thing when I went to the UK. When we were playing Powerball, your flooring, your surface was very soft.
All right.
And it was very hard to get moving real fast. Because our floors that we played Powerball on we were concrete and we had a pad, but it wasn't super thick. When you hit the floor, you could feel it. But yet at the same time, it was you could really get your footing and your gripping, and you could tackle very easy. So that was one of the things that the US, the American Gladiators noticed when we went to the UK, that your flooring was so thick and padded, it was hard to get going. It was interesting. But that was my favorite, was Powerball, because I could tackle people.
And guarding those 5 baskets are our International Gladiators, Ice, Flash, and Jet!
Ice from the USA, Flash from Finland, and if you need me to tell you where Jet comes from, you must have been out of the country for a couple of years.
Here we go, the American champion versus the British champion.
And on the first 2 attempts on the basket, both girls unsuccessful.
As Kim goes down hard, courtesy of Ice. We're under 20 seconds.
Kimberly makes the big decision, but throws it away. We're out of time here. It's 2 apiece.
Kim and Eunice thankful it's all over.
Well done, girls. Magnificent performance. First of all, Ice, you were fantastic.
Thank you very much. You know, we're in the finals here, and you got to give it everything that you have. And I think we got an awesome team here tonight. And I think that's why we shut them out as much as we possibly could.
Jet, magnificent performance, all of your teamwork.
I think so. I mean, every time I turned around marking the center, these 2 girls had it covered. So I can say to good teammates, you were brilliant. Well done.
Let's hear for our International Gladiators, Ice, Flash, and Jet.
That's the best defensive team we've ever seen.
International Gladiators. Did you enjoy it? What was your favourite memory from the international events?
I would say the favorite memory, honestly, was performing in front of 7,000 to 8,000 people. I mean, that was pretty amazing. You guys, that was awesome, as a matter of fact. You know, we didn't get that kind of, audience participation, let's say. Going over the UK was just amazing. From the time we got there and we got to see London and you guys got to show us around and, we went to a couple pubs. And I mean, as a matter of fact, you introduced me to Indian food over there that was amazing that I had never had before.
Really?
I actually never had Indian food until you introduced me to Indian food over there. That was amazing. The whole experience of the UK, international show was just something I'll never forget. It was just really, really cool. Your games, the UK Gladiators. I mean, some of the Eunice, I'll never forget her. She was a contender. She was gnarly.
Yes, in that gauntlet, wasn't it, in the final?
Yeah, she came after me in the gauntlet.
Was there any kind of backstage drama to that, or do you think she was just so psyched up with it being the final that she was just in the zone?
I think I avoided her more than anything else. I think I was a little afraid of her at that point in time.
And first into the gauntlet, full-time mother and kickbox champion from Liverpool, Eunice Huthart, 5'7" and 10 stone.
Contender ready!
John, I've seen a lot of female contenders before, but I'm not sure I've ever seen one that likes to scrap and fight and claw as much as Eunice Huthart. Look at her, she is going wild!
And she goes at the ice with her pick and takes her on, straight onto lightning.
I thought Ice was going to take Eunice's head off with that ramrod, trying to get by Flash here. Flash pinning her down. She is a whirling dervish in there, is Eunice Huthart.
She loves a fight and takes it to Jazz and Nightshade and through.
In 21.1 seconds, she'll get 5 points. And what is she doing now? Hey, she is going back after Ice before John Anderson is able to restrain her.
Well, what was that all about?
Calm down.
John Anderson reading the riot act to her, Mike. What was that all about then?
Here's what it's all about. Eunice took exception to Ice going high and then slapped Ice in the face. No call for that, though.
You said it. She's a scrapper.
Tell me, we're in the final. You've done this before. How much harder is it?
Yeah, well, it is harder. You're against top-class athletes out there. I just thought there was a bit of something untoward out there, so I lost my cool a little. I shouldn't have. I apologise.
At the start, looked like she was trying to out-psych you.
No, just a bit of bantering, that's all. I apologise.
Good sportsmanship. Let's hear it for Eunice Huthart. 5 points.
If anybody hasn't seen that clip, we'll post it on our social channel. But it is one of the most iconic gladiator clips from the international final.
Exactly.
So,
we couldn't have an international scandal on Gladiators.
did you get to try any of the UK only events? So we had some that you didn't have in the US series. There was poleaxe.
Yeah, I didn't get to play poleaxe. I got to, obviously watch it. It was just amazing and scary all at the same time. I mean, that thing was like, I don't know how many feet is. Crazy. The other one was that pendulum? We didn't have that either. That was crazy. I didn't get to play that one, but I watched it. I mean, because there were so many gladiators and so many events that, we only got to play 1 or 2 events, but it was very cool to actually, watch them and see what it was. And I mean, like poleaxe, for instance, our soundstage wouldn't even be able to hold that because that was so high. I mean, I don't know how many feet high it was, but our soundstage wasn't even that high, and that's why we didn't have pendulum either. We didn't have the room, pendulum would go from one end of the soundstage and hit the other wall,
And how did the teams get on? Like we had the UK, USA, Finland, Russia, South Africa, Australia, Germany. How did all of the gladiator teams, and I suppose this is to die as well, all of these gladiators together, how did it feel? I imagine it would be a bit like the Olympics, I suppose, because it was the Olympics of gladiators. Was there any like controversy between you all, or did you all just get on? And the friendship between Ice and Jet seems, and I can see it on this call today, you had a really good time together and really got on.
It was cool. It was a lot of fun. I mean, before Diane tells you, from my experience, I think you're right. Everybody came together like a big family almost. It was like, the Olympics. And I think everybody was so excited to be there, and just participate in the whole thing that it was just like an honor in a way, And so it was very exciting. I mean, some cool things too. It's like, how we all got together every morning, like everybody was staying at the same hotel. So everybody all at the same time would go down and have coffee beforehand. So all the gladiators would be down there, and yeah, it was awesome. It was very cool.
I remember you stealing all is it saccharin? Is it like Canderel? We call it Canderel. You kept stealing them.
But I had to do something because your UK coffee was terrible. I was putting all kinds of stuff in it.
And Lori, you were lucky enough to come over to the UK twice, so in 1994 and then for the second international series in 1995. And you also brought over the legendary Peggy Odita, which she has been mentioned multiple times on our podcast. And I know, Di, you have also got a renowned respect for Peggy as well. What made Peggy such a good contender?
I'm going to say her height and her weight.
This is overtime for Ice, now trying to go 3 for 3. And that may be an impossible mission against this woman, Peggy Odita. Let's go back to last year. An Odita victory over Zap in another round of Whiplash. She took the measure of Sky. Can she make Ice yet another gladiator victim? Great athletic talent, super strength. She's got Ice on the verge. And there she goes. She's got her. Peggy Odita, 10 points. Speed, power, quickness, Peggy O has got it all. Ice, I know you're the last person to offer an alibi, but having to do 3 of these things has got to be tough overtime work.
Yes, it was very tough, Mike, but I really have to admit, this woman here is the best athlete I've ever run up against in all my 5 years, and all the power to her. And when I was coming up against her in this, I wanted her so bad, Mike.
She was 5'9", weighing 180 pounds. She was running over us.
I'll never forget when you just said to me, Diane, Peggy Odita. I'm like, who's this? Who's this? And then she arrived. I'm like, oh, it's... I know what you mean.
I mean, this girl she had the height and the weight. And yes, at the same time, she was an athlete. I mean, she was track and field. And I think that, I don't think she went to the Olympics, but she was pretty high ranked, in track and field. So her legs were like tree trunks, I remember when she first came on our show, and we I hate to say it, but we actually started losing to her, and I remember going to one of the producers and going, okay, so here's the deal. You want to make us look good or you want to make us look bad? No more Peggy Odita contenders.
And Lori, just before we kind of move on from the internationals, what did you think of the UK costumes? Because they were quite different in style with the logos and the emblems on the front. Would you have preferred a costume like that, or did you really like your American red, white and blue costumes with the names kind of emblazoned on them?
I actually liked our costumes because we got to have our names on them. I definitely loved our names being on our uniforms because honestly, I mean, when you're on television and somebody doesn't know who you are right away, they can look at your uniform. That's Jet. Oh, that's Ice. Oh, that's Nitro. So it's like they pick up on it real quick and they know exactly who you are. So it gives that name recognition a little bit more boost real quickly. Mm-hmm. So I actually loved our uniforms. I mean, but of course, it was red, white, and blue American. So the UK had to do something a little bit different. What do you think?
Sorry, Stephen Adnett, who designed our costumes, but they were a bit flimsy. So we had to stick them down in every orifice. They weren't as kind of tough as yours. Yours was like Lycra, but ours was like Lycra and then it didn't work. It didn't work because we needed like double lycra. It didn't work quite as much as your costumes. I must admit, running around with everything kind of flopping about.
I paid for good television. No, you're right. I mean, okay, so now let's go back though, and I don't know if you've done this, but if you go back and look at your gladiator, like, you know, when you were the first, second, third year, I have just recently done that because, you know, getting ready for Netflix, I had to do like some remembering and stuff. And yeah, I remember pulling my costume constantly. I was pulling it kind of like out of my butt, you know, constantly, you know. But then I look back and I'm watching like doing Hang Tough and everything. And I'm like, going, wow, that was amazing. What was I so concerned about? Wow, if I would have known that my legs and my butt and my abs looked, I mean, and I'm not being arrogant right now. I'm just going, did I really appreciate it that much? The fun of getting older. I feel as though I could go back and do the games. However, I know that my body is like, no, you can't. It's like now, you know, you grab the bed to pull over to like actually get out instead of popping up right away. I mean, you know, after playing Gladiators over and over and over, it's like we talk about that over here all the time. It's like lower back, you know, a little knee issues here and there. You know, you just don't realize what you put your body through playing these games year after year after year. And at the time, you feel invincible.
And Lori, just going back to American Gladiators and the show kind of coming to an end. The show ended Series 7 in 96, and you guys moved over to American Gladiators Orlando Live, which was a dinner show in Florida where the audience could sit, eat steak, drink beer. So how was the transition between a TV show to then the dinner show? And then obviously, I think it lasted, was it 2 years? I think it was 1998. It kind of shut its doors, well, quite controversially, but I'll let you tell the story if you don't mind.
Well, it's interesting because when we got done filming that year, it was only about 4 months later, they said, hey, we're looking into doing a dinner show. And originally it was supposed to be up in Las Vegas. We thought, okay, cool. That would be pretty cool. Because over here we had a dinner show and it was called Medieval Night. And that was where they would do horseback jousting and you'd sit and you'd eat. And it was kind of fun. It was very entertaining. So when they introduced this and it was going to be in Vegas, we were like, okay. You know, we weren't quite sure what to think about it, but we were game because the show was going on, you know, and at the time we didn't realize that was going to be our last season on television. They never told us. They never said a thing about it. So we went ahead and we got ready and we were, you know, rehearsing and doing things for the dinner show, and come to find out it wasn't Vegas. It was Orlando, Florida. Went down to Orlando, Florida, and I didn't move down there. Some of the Gladiators actually did for the time being, but I would go for a month, work a month, come back a month. The original dinner theater was a lot of fun. It was really cool. They had fireworks. We were out of the ceiling. You know, we were rappelling on ropes out of the ceiling as Gladiators in the very beginning of the show. We had dancers, and they really made it this amazing production, you know, so it was super cool.
It's the most thrilling action on television, and now you can see the American Gladiators live and up close in Orlando, Florida. It's 90 minutes of power-packed excitement, starring the same superbly conditioned male and female athletes known around the world. These awesome athletes face fierce contenders in the assault, breakthrough and conquer, joust, whiplash, the wall, and Powerball. You'll cheer them on from Gladiator Arena, the only place in the world where the American Gladiators compete live. For tickets and information, call 1-800-BATTLE-4. That's 1-800-BATTLE-4.
Now, fast forward about 2 months. Well, the fireworks stopped. The dancers stopped. We stopped coming out of the ceiling. Everything started dropping down. So it went from this amazing production to, by the time we were done, we had, I mean, they might as well have pulled some guy out of the audience to be the MC of the show. Oh, we're missing a gladiator. Well, who wants to put on a uniform in the audience tonight? I mean, it got down to that point right there to where they just pulled money out of it and they weren't putting any more money into it whatsoever. So it kind of drizzled out. And yeah, the controversy was at the very, very end of it. I wasn't there at the very end. I wasn't there for the last 3 months, but the last 3 months, they actually stopped paying the gladiators and they kept promising them next week, next week, next week. So they kept performing. All of a sudden I came in because a couple gladiators had left and I didn't understand why they were, they didn't let anybody know. So I came in and I was there for about a week. And that particular week that I was there, the very end of it, we all showed up. We were in the parking lot ready to go in. There were chains on the door and we were waiting for somebody to show up. No phone call, no kiss my butt. No, you're done. The show's over. I mean, that's how it ended. And to this day, we never got, hey, the television show is done. Thank you for your services. It was awesome. We really enjoyed it. Thank you. So we never got we never got anything from any producers, no phone calls, no letters, no knock on the door, nada, nothing. It was the worst ending to where it was almost like, it's like you're missing something. Like there's no closure. We never had any closure. Let's put it that way. That was very, very strange.
Such a shame as well, because that's something that I was always so pleased with the UK show, that when we had our final series, we knew that it was going to be the final series. They made it extra special by bringing back.
That's how it should have been.
Yeah, and it was great to have it as a final send-off. Felt like the book was closed and it was like that chapter was all done. So it's such a shame, not only for like the fans, but like you guys as gladiators who have put so much service and effort and passion into making the show what it was.
That's why it's kind of like everybody got to tell their story on Netflix. And, it's kind of like that. And the documentary, we got to, really kind of maybe have some closure. And then what we're really hoping for, that then we're going to actually have a reunion with everybody. Then maybe we could do something like that to where it's like, I hate to say it, but 30 years later, maybe we could have some closure.
And also, there's always numerous reports about American Gladiators returning to TV screens. There's been so many over the recent years. And then obviously it was rebooted by NBC for 2 seasons in 2008. And unlike the UK version, which they pulled in a lot of references from the original show, including the Gladiators, which they brought back to compete in special episodes against the new breed of gladiators. Whereas watching the rebooted show on NBC, it was almost like there was no reference to the original show or the gladiators or the fans that followed the show through. And I think that was such a missed opportunity, because the audience that would be watching nowadays are old enough that their kids would be the prime target audience for the show as well.
So let me put you on the spot here, Diane. Did you get to see the reboot of the American Gladiators?
No, I didn't.
The only reason I had a second is because of the fact that they brought in Layla Ali, Hulk Hogan, the gladiators they brought in, all the original gladiators. We all said the same thing. We went, these are not American gladiators. No, they kind of picked on character almost in a way. They didn't pick on, the original gladiators were like, we were feminine, we were tough, we were built, we were the whole sex appeal, everything. We were like the package. And when they picked the new gladiators for the new show, all that went out the window. It was weird. And then they took away the red, white, and blue.
And the most controversial thing as well was the rebooted American show had their own version of Jet and Wolf. The champion contender from series 1 was transformed into Jet for the second season.
Wow. Okay, I did not
know that.
I know they did Wolf. Our US version of Wolf did not justify your UK version of Wolf. Okay, he was an original. And this is one thing about the show. I don't know about you, Diane, but this is how I feel about it. Do not reuse names.
Yeah,
do not.
I totally agree.
I don't understand why they would do that. Is it pure laziness? Is it I don't have any original creativity to come up with a name? Why wouldn't they? Because every single gladiator from the day of time when they started this show has their own original persona of who they are and how they made that character. You cannot. So when I saw that there was an ice in the UK, I was pissed. I was so angry. I was just like, oh my God, why can't they be original? Why can't they grab their own name? But yet we do it over here as well. They did it. So I can't blame one or the other. It's just a come on, producers. Come on, creativity team.
Agree.
Do not take the original name. Yeah. I mean, there's never going to be another Jet. There's never going to be another Ice. I don't care how they play it. Nobody can ever top the 2 originals. They can't. We are who we are.
Electra will now face off with Ice, and here are her impressions of this imposing gladiator.
When I first went against Ice, I have to admit, yeah, I was a little scared when I was up there on the joust, because I looked at her and I shouldn't have looked at her, because she just blocked my whole vision. I shouldn't have looked at her because she's huge, but I did, and then I went, oh my God, she's very big.
All these years later, what's going on with your social media, TikTok, to be precise?
Come on, we didn't have social media back in the day. If we had social media where we were gladiators, oh man, it would have been a whole different ball game. I kind of decided to take the opportunity to where when I found out that we were going to be doing the documentary and becoming a little bit more relevant, I've always had my Instagram, I've always had Facebook. I never really kind of got into it. It's like, I'd throw a little picture up here, little video, no big deal. I wasn't the kind of person that went, okay, I want my entire life out on social media. I kind of picked and choose. I was like, I'll throw my golf out there. I'll throw my Hawaii vacation, whatever. But I was never that person. I was like, once the documentary came around, I said, okay, so I need to do something to become kind of relevant again. So when it hit, and then they'll start kind of like, what is she doing? Where is she? So if there's any endorsements, there's any public speaking events, if there's any, acting kind of television, whatever, at least I'll have something out there to where they can go and do that. And I was just like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this.
Got 1.1 million likes already, so it's doing fantastically.
Yeah, I was super happy. I just have fun with it, to be honest with you. I like to make people laugh, and they're short little TikTok videos.
One of my favorite videos of yours is when you're banging on the door, like to release Ice, and you're in your costume on the other side when the camera.
Exactly.
I loved it. It's so good.
Exactly. So I like to do things like that. And then the other one, I don't know if you guys ever saw, one of my favorites is the Ron Burgundy. And it's on, I did one of the TikTok videos to it. I don't know if you know who I am, but I'm kind of a big deal. I'm always trying to think of different TikTok videos. I mean, it's very time consuming to do those videos. It really is, because no, I don't wake up every day and do my hair and makeup. I wake up every day and I put a baseball hat on and I go to the gym, or I'm playing golf or something. So it's like, to do these TikTok videos, it's like, okay, I got to take an entire, do the hair, do the makeup. What am I going to do?
If there's any Gladiator fans out there, they need to follow you, Lori, don't they? And it's lori.ice.fetrick. And you touched upon golf there. So you swapped the pugil sticks for a golf club. You absolutely love golf, don't you?
I do. I've actually been playing now for probably, 10, 15 years. But golf is a type of sport to where it's like you can't just pick it up, play for a year, stop 5 years, pick it up another. I mean, you can, but you're just not going to be very good at it. Golf is one of those things where you got to be consistent. You have to play at least once a week and go to the range and hit balls to be a very good golfer and a very consistent. So when I was doing Gladiators, I was doing a lot of charity golf events, which I absolutely love doing. So I'm trying to find, here in the US, there's different promoters that will do charity golf events around the United States. And they're just scrambled, they're fun, but you get to play on some amazing, beautiful courses. And one of the reasons I love golf so much is because it's gorgeous. You're outside for 4 or 5 hours, and really the courses are just beautiful, trees and ponds and just everything is gorgeous. So that's one of the reasons I actually love golf so much as well. But yeah, I've been playing it now for quite some time. So I'm starting to play tournaments and be a little competitive there.
I have one final question that I'm not sure if you'll be able to answer. There was rumors back in the day that when you guys came over to the international series, that the American Gladiator producers, Samuel Goldwyn, were so impressed by the UK production that they actually wanted to film the American series in the UK arena and then broadcast it in the States as if it was in the USA. Have you heard any of those rumors back in the day?
Wow, I'd never heard that. None of us had ever heard that. But if we had, that would have been amazing, because we would have got the audience. I don't know, we might not have drawn in the audience, who knows? But we would have got the audience. We would have got the play, probably pendulum, poleaxe, and all the really big games that we couldn't put inside of our soundstage. So I think that would have been something amazing. But most likely what happened is, I think one of the reasons, this is something else that's kind of talked about a lot, that here in the United States, Samuel Goldwyn, our show was one of those shows to where they actually come to find out never thought it was going to take off in the first place. So when they put it out on the air, they had no idea. They just threw it out there. And all of a sudden, boom, it clicked and it started getting momentum. They never put any money into this show. There was no advertising over here. There's no commercials over here for it. So they just kind of like realized that, oh my God, we have a cash cow. And so they just kept taking and never put anything into it. So most likely it was too expensive to actually do it in the UK. And so Samuel Goldwyn just went, oh, never mind, let's do it here. It's cheaper. Even though that it might have gotten some more momentum, your show in UK it's lasted so long that it just blows our mind over here. Yeah. And it's simply because I do truly believe that they really care about it. They're putting money into it. They put money into the Gladiators, and it just kind of keeps going. If they would have done that here, our show, I think, would have continued to go. We would have had more seasons, but they just went, oh, let's take the money out, and they just let it fail.
I'm as cold as ice. You want to know what your best chance is to beat Ice Ice Baby? Show me you're not scared.
I don't want to say goodbye.
I know, this is the best podcast I've done. And I've done a lot of podcasts lately, and this is the best one. I love it. You know why? It's because I get to play off of you, and you get to tell your stories as well. It's like, yes, I remember that,
Really brilliant memories. I can't thank you enough for spending some time here on the GladPod with us.
There we have it, ice on the GladPod. Two things have happened since then. First of all, I'm feeling much better now, so I actually have a speaking voice, not full of cold. But secondly, since we spoke to Lori, the 6-part Netflix documentary Muscles and Mayhem was released, and it has done phenomenally well. I absolutely loved it. It hit the #1 spot on Netflix in the US, reached #3 in the UK. It was great, wasn't it, Paul?
It was amazing. It was epic. I think it was everything a Gladiator fan, and probably even a casual viewer of Gladiators, would have wanted, because it really did take you on a journey from the very early days of how this concept came about, from the early days of the Gladiators and how it looked of the pilot episode, and film it in this kind of the barn environment, smelling of horse manure and stuff like that, and taking us all the way through to the epic show that we kind of know today, as well as with all of the controversy that kind of came across with Gladiators, which I think is part of the appeal of the show of Gladiators, is that yes, it's a family show and yes, it's great sportsmanship, but there is a side to it that does have this controversy and all of these stories that I think, as a tabloid point of view, do draw in a lot of the fans. And the American Gladiators were not shy in talking about some of this stuff.
Well, yeah, and of course, the ESPN 30 for 30 American Gladiators documentary has also come out. And do you know what? I know that they're rival documentaries. I know we spoke about it, and I know Lori was very pleased with the Gladiators that she had in hers. But for a Glad fan, both of them were just brilliant to be able to watch, weren't they?
We almost had like two for the price of one. We had two documentaries when, to be honest, it could have just been one. They worked really well together and gave different perspectives on the show, different themes, obviously with kind of different narratives, but they definitely did work well. I watched them kind of almost back to back, and I think it really did give a really good rounded picture from both sides of the story.
There were so many bits to unpick with that. My notepad is just like, I've just got loads of scrawlings on there. Just looking at the start of her journey, just the amount of effort that she had to put in the show. She had to hunt down how to apply to be on it, and then she had to wait like months to get on it. A show, by the way, I must add, that she said was the stupidest show she'd ever seen.
She would.
So I, just looking at that time though, with the American version, obviously because the British version was so much different to it, I kind of could see why she would say it was the stupidest show she'd ever seen.
That's kind of part of her personality though as well. She was very not backwards and coming forwards of any opinion on anything, and that gave her that kind of real edge of the ice character in the arena. And I know that Lightning, our own Lightning, is probably the longest serving and the most incredible all-round gladiator there probably ever will be as a female on this planet. But But for me, I used to stay up until 2:00 in the late hours of the morning and watched a few episodes of the American show. I have my jaw on the floor, and she, for me, epitomised the female gladiator at the top of her game. And the nice thing is, still to this day, she'd be out there given half the chance. And it was very spit and sawdust, wasn't it, when they first started over in America? And I kind of liked the grittiness of that. And then you come all the years later and the UK take it on, and the sophistication of our lighting design, the costume, the sheer scope of what we did compared to those very early hatchling days over there on the west side of the States.
We really did hit the nail on the head when she talks about the American Gladiators producers replacing the popular gladiators, thinking they were dispensable, and then the ratings dropped. There was a lot of smiling from her when we was discussing that.
Yeah, they would have been.
But then the American Gladiators tour sold out Madison Square Gardens. Like, could you imagine a UK tour like that? It was huge. And just talking about going from state to state, just the mechanics of doing that, phenomenal.
It would have been a huge machine to move around a vast country like the States. But, you know, they had it. They had the investment. It was becoming a well-oiled machine as well, with their cast and crew and everybody that was involved. I'm not sure to this day whether we could quite do it as well, only because we simply don't have. We would want to fill like massive arenas like the NIA, now the Barclaycard Arena, and probably when Wembley now. It's just a bigger scale that we brought to it. But the Americans, they had this like tour bus mentality and all those little mini arenas and stadiums that they could use because I suppose their sporting background with American football, they can do it. They could get away with it.
I felt like when we were discussing the International Gladiators, just you both were just talking about how lovely it was to spend time with the other team and that sort of camaraderie between the teams from different countries, from different productions.
I do. She used to pick on me because I'd become a fairly popular female British gladiator. And of course, she was the queen of the American gladiators. So if we were on like a tour bus, an open top tour bus going around any of the cities that we did, and I would just feel this like flick on my ear, and she's all like poking at people and goading people out of complete cheekiness and fun. She didn't sit still for a moment without wanting to get a laugh or a rise from somebody. And I loved that playful mischievousness that she brought to the show. All of them, they were such great characters on the original American show.
You guys know me now. I do love a glad name with a story. I love that Ice picked her name, inspired by the Iceman from Top Gun. But also at the same time, you had Ice Ice Baby as the theme song was released kind of around the same time. And we've had another first on the GladPod with this episode, was a gladiator being scared of doing events in case there were earthquakes. If there's an earthquake, I think being in an atmosphere, being in that cage is probably not going to be a bad thing, is it, Di?
That's true. I hadn't quite thought of it that way. But I do know that there were, particularly on the West Coast, there were in LA at the time, during the time actually, and probably not long before we all met and did International Gladiators, they were having to do drills by standing in doorways and going under tables and things, kids at schools and things like that. And it was truly terrifying. So yeah, you could imagine it would have been a really kind of real thing for them to consider.
And then two contender names came up again, Eunice, Peggy Odita.
I think there was a massive respect there for her. I think that's one thing with Ice, is that she is a true athlete and she has massive respect for another really good competitor. So I think even though there was that kind of rivalry with Eunice, especially with it being an international episode as well, because you've kind of got your whole country behind you looking at you, what you're doing.
I love how in her mind she'd be back doing all the events like tomorrow. She's still there. She's still got that kind of gladiatorial spirit coursing through her veins. And actually, it was great, Di, for me to see just the friendship that, you know, you two that still have. And actually, you've been a guest on her podcast as well, right?
I have, and apparently it's done very well. So that's a nice thing. I mean, because we were only like small fry to the big American Gladiators over there. So for then that to go out across the country and actually perform really well I'm really flattered. Thank you, America.
But Paul, the other note I've got here is just how much of a shame it was when you think about the end of the UK series, and I can still see it now with Wolf walking down the corridor, you know, turning it off, just how they thought all of that through. It's going to end. We're going to go out with a bang. It's going to definitely be a closure. People know it's going to end. I just didn't realize with the American one, there wasn't an ending, was there? It just kind of limped on until I just went, yeah, no, that's it really.
Yeah, and I just think for a fan who's followed the show for so many seasons and years and really got like invested in it and grown up with the show as well, for it to kind of just vanish and not have that kind of clear-cut ending. It's quite unfortunate, really. And I know that they had the dinner show, which we kind of spoke about, but again, for that to end in the way that it did, and then just to turn up and the doors be bolted shut and sorry, that's it, see you later. I think it's such a shame, because American Gladiators started this whole franchise, and you always think that it would have had this big massive ending and kind of had what it deserved, really. I know the Netflix documentary is some kind of like reunion and celebratory kind of element of that, but I hope that this is the catalyst for something else for them all, for the fans that have followed it for so long.
Yes, I totally agree with that. I think it would just be a lovely, I don't know, like a turning of the tide for the new generation with the BBC show coming out. I just think, it would be a shame for there not to be some acknowledgement of bringing each kind of tide of gladiatorial entertainment that the Brits have done, the Americans have done, and sort of tie the loose ends up, really. I think it would be apt.
Paul, Di, thank you so much. Remember, guys, you can get in touch with the GladPod by emailing gladpod@gladiatorstv.com, or you can send us a message on Twitter, Facebook, or Instagram. Thank you so much for joining us this week. We'll see you again soon.
Good competition, good spirit, great sportsmanship as both contenders show mutual respect. Join us again next week for the ultimate challenge, the might of...